The road hadn't changed. A year had passed since the accident, yet everything looked the same. The cracked guardrail, the crooked road sign bent toward the ditch, and the blackened skid marks that rain could never wash away. The November air hung heavy with fog that night, the kind that made light scatter and sound stretch. The three of them, Eli, Marcus, and Jenna, stood in silence beside the makeshift roadside memorial, where flowers, photographs, and half-burnt candles still clung to life against the cold. It was the first time they had come back since the crash. The night their friend died. His name was Dylan. He had been driving. And for an entire year, none of them could say it aloud without that hollow feeling tightening in their chest. Marcus dropped to a knee beside the wooden cross. The paint had faded, but the carved initials were still there. D.W., he whispered. He replaced the wilted bouquet with fresh white lilies, then lit a candle from his lighter. The small flame flickered in the wind, struggling against the fog. Jenna stood beside the car, arms folded tightly. "It still feels like it just happened," she said quietly. "I can still hear the crash. The metal." Eli didn't answer. He couldn't. His throat felt too tight, and the memory was too sharp. Dylan's laughter just before the bend, the headlights flashing through fog, the shriek of tires on wet asphalt. It all replayed like it had been waiting for them to return. The woods beside the highway whispered softly in the breeze. Crickets chirped somewhere deep in the trees, but the rest of the night was unnervingly still. Every so often, a car would pass far away on the other side of the hill, its distant hum quickly swallowed by the fog. They stood there for nearly 20 minutes before Marcus said, "Let's go. We did what we came to do." Jenna hesitated. "Wait." She bent down to pick up one of the old photos from the ground. It was half covered in mud, a picture of all four of them from their senior trip 2 summers ago. They were smiling, standing in front of Dylan's car. The same car that still lay rusting a few hundred yards down the hill. "Should we, maybe see it one last time?" she asked. Eli turned toward her sharply. "You want to go down there? Now?" "It's just," Jenna's voice trembled. "It feels wrong to leave it like that. Like he's still waiting for us." Marcus sighed. "The car's barely standing. It's not safe." But Eli had already started down the embankment. His flashlight cut through the mist, casting pale white light over the damp grass. Part of him wanted to tell himself it was stupid, that it was just a wreck, just twisted metal, but another part of him couldn't shake the pull. The others followed reluctantly. The descent was steep, muddy, and cold. The air felt heavier the lower they went. The smell of damp earth mixed with something faintly metallic, the lingering scent of burnt steel. The car came into view slowly through the fog. It looked smaller than Eli remembered, half crushed and half buried in the undergrowth, as if the forest had started swallowing it whole. The windows were gone, the seats rotted, the steering wheel covered in moss. And yet, the driver's door was wide open. "Did someone come here?" Jenna whispered. "No one does," Marcus said. "It's miles from town." Eli stepped closer, shining the light into the cabin. The inside was exactly how it had been described in the police report: airbags deflated, windshield shattered outward, and the faint marks of blood on the cracked dashboard. He shuddered, his stomach turning at the memory of Dylan's head resting there just before they were pulled from the wreck. He was about to turn away when the radio inside the car crackled. It was faint, static-filled, but unmistakable, a voice whispering through the broken speaker. Jenna stumbled back. Eli turned that off. "It's not on," he said. His light trembled slightly in his hand. "There's no battery left." The static grew louder, filling the air with a low hum. A few fragmented words cut through the noise, something that sounded like, "still here." Marcus swore under his breath. No, it's interference or something." Eli crouched closer, trying to hear. The air seemed to press against his ears, thick and buzzing. And then, for just a second, he heard it clearly, Dylan's voice. "Eli." The sound was faint, distant, but real enough to make every hair on his neck stand. He jerked back so fast he nearly slipped on the wet ground. "Did you hear that?" Jenna whispered. Marcus shook his head violently. "No. That's not. No one's voice comes from a dead car." But Eli didn't answer. He couldn't. He was staring into the cracked windshield where, for a brief flash, he swore he saw someone sitting behind the wheel. Just a shadow at first. But it had Dylan's shape. Dylan's face. Then it was gone. They ran back up the hill without saying a word. The fog seemed thicker, heavier now, following them all the way to the road. When they reached the memorial, the candle Marcus had lit was out. Only smoke drifted from the wick. "Let's just leave," Jenna said breathlessly. "Please." They piled into Marcus's car and shut the doors, none of them speaking for a long minute. The headlights cut through the mist, illuminating the guardrail and the empty stretch ahead. Eli tried to steady his breathing, but something caught his eye. On the dashboard, his phone lit up with a new message. It was from Dylan's number. The screen read, "Thanks for coming back." Eli's blood ran cold. His phone had blocked that contact months ago, after Dylan's mother canceled his service. He knew it couldn't be possible. Jenna leaned over to look. "Who's that?" Eli couldn't answer. The phone buzzed again. "See you soon." The car went silent. Marcus muttered, "Someone's messing with you." But the words didn't sound convincing. Eli turned off his phone and shoved it into his pocket. He told himself there was a rational reason. A spoof, a glitch, anything, but as Marcus drove away he couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching from the woods. And in the rearview mirror, through the fog, a faint light glowed near the wreck. It looked like the beam of a flashlight. But all three of them had left theirs in the car. The drive back was silent. None of them dared to mention the messages or the voice, or the strange figure Eli swore he saw behind the windshield. The only sound was the tires whispering against the damp asphalt, and the rhythmic squeak of the wipers brushing aside the fog. It was as though November itself had swallowed the world whole. Marcus dropped Jenna off first. She hesitated before stepping out, clutching her jacket close. "Text me when you get home," she said quietly. "All of you." Eli nodded, though he wasn't sure he would. His phone still sat dead silent in his pocket, turned off but somehow heavier than before. When Marcus finally pulled into Eli's driveway, the streetlights flickered weakly, as if even they wanted to go dark. "Get some sleep," Marcus muttered, forcing a tired smile. "We'll talk tomorrow, when this fog clears." Eli didn't respond. He just nodded, stepped out, and walked toward the dim porch light of his small house. He tried not to look over his shoulder, but something made him pause, a faint sound behind him. Gravel crunching. Like someone taking one step too many. He turned around quickly. The car was already gone. The street was empty. Only fog. Inside, the house felt colder than usual. He flicked on the lights. Nothing. The power had gone out sometime that evening. He sighed, pulled out his phone to use the flashlight, then froze. His phone was on. The lock screen glowed faintly in his hand, even though he hadn't turned it back on. And there, right across the center of the screen, was a photo. Not one he'd ever taken. It was dark, grainy, taken from the end of a road. Three silhouettes stood by a cross. Eli, Marcus, and Jenna, staring down at something out of frame. The timestamp read, 11:46 p.m. November 12th. That was tonight. The time they had been at the crash site. The phone slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. His heart pounded so hard he thought he might faint. He crouched to pick it up, and when the screen lit again, a new message appeared beneath the photo. "I miss you guys." The letters pulsed for a moment, then faded, replaced by static lines that streaked the display. Eli stared at the phone for nearly a full minute before whispering, "Dylan?" The sound of something shifting in the next room made him spin around. A faint scraping like fingernails dragging across drywall. It came from behind the hallway wall. He stepped closer, every instinct screaming not to, and pressed his ear against the plaster. For a moment, nothing. Then, a slow, deliberate tap. Once, twice. Like someone knocking back. The next morning, Eli woke up to the sound of his phone ringing. Sunlight filtered weakly through the blinds. His head throbbed. He hadn't realized he'd fallen asleep on the couch. Marcus's name flashed on the screen. He hesitated before answering. "Eli," Marcus's voice came through, strained and unsteady. "Did you get a message last night?" Eli's mouth went dry. "You got one too?" Marcus exhaled shakily. "Yeah. From Dylan's number. It just said, 'You forgot something.'" Eli's skin crawled. "Forgot what?" "I don't know," Marcus said. "But when I woke up this morning..." He stopped. Eli could hear movement on the other end, like Marcus pacing. "When I woke up, there was mud all over my front steps. Footprints. Bare ones." Eli's hand tightened around the phone. "Don't mess with me, Marcus." "I'm not," Marcus whispered. "And I checked the footage from my doorbell cam." "What did you see?" Marcus's breath hitched audibly. "It's Dylan, Eli. He was standing there. Just standing there in the fog." The line went silent for a long moment until Eli whispered, "Where's Jenna?" "She's not answering." By noon, they were both at Jenna's apartment. The curtains were drawn, the door unlocked. The place was quiet, except for the low hum of her television still on in the background. "Jenna?" Marcus called softly. No answer. They moved down the hallway toward her bedroom, where the air was noticeably colder. The door was half open. Jenna sat on the edge of her bed, staring blankly at the wall. "Jen?" Eli said carefully. She turned her head slowly, eyes unfocused. "He's here," she whispered. Eli's stomach dropped. "Who?" Jenna's hand trembled as she pointed toward the wall beside her bed. "Dylan. He talks through the wall." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Jenna, you're just tired." "Listen," she hissed. And then they heard it, faint but unmistakable. A rhythmic scraping, like fingers dragging across drywall from the inside. It moved from one side of the room to the other, slow and deliberate. Eli stepped closer, his voice shaking. "That's impossible. There's no crawlspace there." But Jenna only whispered, "He's been trying to get out." Her phone buzzed suddenly on the bed. All three of them froze. On the screen, a message blinked in from Dylan's number again. "Let me in." Jenna screamed and threw the phone against the wall. It shattered, pieces scattering across the floor. But the scraping didn't stop. It grew louder. Faster. Something was moving inside the wall. Eli grabbed her arm. "We're leaving. Now." They ran out, slamming the door behind them. The last thing Eli heard was a muffled sound from inside the room, like laughter. That night, they gathered at Eli's house again. None of them spoke for a while. The fog had returned, thick as ever, pressing against the windows. Marcus poured whiskey into 3 glasses with shaking hands. "This isn't real," he muttered. "It can't be." Jenna sat in silence, staring at the floor. "He said he never left," she whispered. Eli turned toward her slowly. "What?" "That night," she said, "when the paramedics were pulling us out of the wreck." Dylan's hand was still holding mine. "I heard him say it, 'Don't leave me.' I thought it was just my head. But maybe." The light above them flickered once, twice, then went out. Darkness filled the room. Marcus grabbed his flashlight and flicked it on, and froze. Standing in the corner was a figure. Pale. Dripping wet. Head tilted slightly to one side. His eyes dark, empty hollows that caught the beam of light just enough to gleam. Eli's breath caught. "Dylan?" The figure stepped forward slowly, each footfall echoing on the wooden floor. Water dripped from his clothes, forming small, dark puddles beneath him. His voice was hoarse, broken. "You left me." Jenna started to cry. "We didn't, Dylan, you." He moved closer, the air around them turning icy. The walls groaned. The picture frames rattled. Marcus backed away toward the door, fumbling for the handle. "We have to." The door slammed shut on its own. The figure smiled faintly, a thin, crooked line that didn't look human. I waited. The lights flickered again, and when they came back on, he was gone. Only the sound of dripping water remained, echoing from somewhere down the hall. Eli stepped forward, heart hammering. "Dylan?" he whispered. No response. He turned slowly toward the sound. It was coming from his bedroom. The door stood slightly ajar, a faint glow seeping from underneath. Jenna shook her head. "Don't." But Eli pushed the door open anyway. The room was empty except for the wall. Across it, written in dark streaks of moisture and dirt, were the words, "It's still November." The air turned bitter cold. The lights flickered one last time, then went out completely. And from behind the wall, a voice whispered, soft, broken, almost loving, "See you next year." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss another night of dread. Every click keeps the stories alive. And the ghosts listening.